All right, well, welcome everyone. I'm just going to keep an eye on how many unassigned participants there are. And once that gets closer to 0, then I'll get started. Okay, it looks like there's still about 22 people left who are not yet in the breakout rooms. Okay. Well, I'm sure people will trickle in, and this is being recorded. So people can come in and join us later. So first things first, I am at the IPUMS PMA homepage. And part of this breakout session, I just wanted to show you all how to create a custom data file, because it's super easy and it's going to take just a few minutes. So I'm already logged in. So IPUMS PMA recognizes me. And there's multiple ways from the home screen you can get to select data. And then we have lots of resources. If you'd like to try to figure this out later, we have a support page with tutorial videos, links to a user forum. You can talk with other users about how they're using the data and get some ideas from there. So what I'm doing now is we're going to be downloading the Kenya 2019 data set. So some of you may be greeted with a screen like this when you first go to select data. And we're going to be selecting the family planning person unit of analysis. There's lots of different data modules in PMA. Notably, I'm not sure if you can see at the bottom of my screen, but we just recently released the harmonized COVID-19 survey data, an excellent resource. I highly recommend you take a look. But for now, we're going to go to the family planning person, and I'm going to first select the sample that we're interested in. I'm going to scroll down to Kenya and select 2019. Only 4 samples have, well, 5. Only a few of the most recent samples have the calendar data. So that would be Burkina Faso, the DRC, Nigeria, and Kenya of 2019. And one thing about PMA data is that they also include women who and households who either refused or could not be interviewed, so that people can calculate the response rates. But we have an option on IPUMS PMA that you can just see the observations that you're interested in. So I'm selecting female respondents. I'll submit my selection there. And next, I'm going to go browse for that calendar data. So I'm going to go under family planning. Oh no, the videos. I can't see it. Okay, here we go. So I'm going to browse for the contraceptive calendar. And then I'm going to add this calendar data to my cart. But we can also browse through the codes, the description, the universe, any other sort of information that you'd like to have about this data. So I'll go back here. And that's all that we need to add right now to do the survival curve that we've done. But if you were interested in continuing to play around, you could also add some key core demographic variables about this woman, her age, her education. You could also add some variables about her geography, whether she lives in an urban area, which county of Kenya she's from. Go ahead and play around, see what things are interesting to you. Then when I'm ready, I'm going to go to View Cart. And then I'll review to make sure that I have the variables that I wanted. So I have person ID, and I've got my calendar, and I've got a few other things. So then I'll create my data extract. One thing to note is this data format. So it already knows me. It knows that I want Stata format, but the default is fixed width. You can still read a fixed width file into Stata. It will automatically generate a Stata do file, but I like getting it directly in Stata format. That just saves you a little bit of having to download a couple different things. I'm going to describe this extract so I know what is contained in this extract. Excellent. So extract request 180 is what I'm waiting for. And it's telling me that it's processing. You see the practice variable, the practice data set that I made yesterday. So I know this is a relatively small file. So I'm just going to refresh and it's already there for me. So now I'm going to download this. And I'm going to put it over here. Got this file path that I want to store it where I know I can find it later. And one thing to know about IPUMS files, and the same is true for PMA files, in order to make them easier to download, they will be compressed. So we provide them in a .gz format, but there's plenty of decompression softwares out there. I prefer 7-zip, it's free, it's really reliable. So I'm just gonna extract this file here, so now I can open it. All right, then I'll just open up this data file. Yeah, I just want to take this time to just check in. Elizabeth, are there any questions in the chat? Are people following along okay?
Not so far. It seems like folks are following along.
Okay, great. And like I said, we have lots of resources. Feel free to email our user support anytime for help with getting extracts off our website. All right, great. So I'm going to get started with all of those steps that we went over before. So I like to get started with just saying set more off. I also want to take a look at the data for myself. And I want to look at what these calendar data look like.
Devin, I think we're frozen. We're stuck on the IPUMS download page. We're not seeing it.
Thank you. I know exactly what that is. Okay. Thank you. I was sharing just that web browser and not just my screen.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. Perfect.
There.
Okay.
That looks like what
Excellent.
we're.
Oh, and how is the readability on the font? Is it at all blurry?
It looks okay to me. I don't know if other folks.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I think might just increase the size just a little bit in case it's hard to read for anyone.
That's great.
People are saying it looks good.
Yeah, they're saying it's readable in the chat. Yeah.
Oh, great. Okay, sounds good. Excellent. Thank you, everyone. And I'm just going to open up and browse the data just as a refresher. I spend a lot of time kind of figuring out these data just by looking at them, kind of looking through them. So this is how they look to start. And then we're going to use that split command. And we're going to say, every time you see a comma, separate it into a new variable. And then I want to tell it to generate a new variable. And I'm just going to call it cal_ke for Kenya. Excellent. So it's reporting to me how many new variables it created. So I'm glad to see that it created 36 for the 36 months that we're seeing. And one thing to note is that some of the women in this sample were interviewed in November and some were interviewed in December. So for some women, December of 2019 is missing. So you probably will see that show up. There'll be like a little hook at the end of the survival curve, and that's where that's from. Okay, excellent. So again, we're just going to take a look at those data just so visually we know exactly what happened. And we left our string calendar variable the same. That's just nice to see that it showed up in exactly the order that we were expecting to see. And this first one will be blank because this woman was interviewed in November rather than December. So she's got a blank for December. This is all very much as we expected to see, which is nice. Excellent. One thing to notice also is because it reads from right to left chronologically, what I want to do to kind of make it a little bit more intuitive is I'm going to switch around the month so that month 1 is the first month of the observation period. So I want month 1 to be January 2017, but currently month 1 is December of 2019. So I'll just do a simple replace. Oh, shoot, sorry, that has to come after I reshape. So first I will reshape to go from that wide format and transpose it into a long format. So reshape long, and I'm giving it this stub. So all of the variables that we created out into the wide format start with cal_ke. So Stata knows that anytime it finds that with a number after it, that's that stub that's going to become a single variable. And I'm going to tell it that we're going to see one person and create multiple observations according to the person ID. And then I'm creating a month variable that will take on the values of the numbers at the end of that stub. One thing that always tripped me up on this step is to make sure that your person ID is unique across all the observations. So if I included household members and they don't have a female ID variable, they're all going to have blanks for that. So it's not going to be unique. And that's why I specified only female respondents when I made the extract, just to save myself that step, because I do that all the time. Okay, and now we can observe how the data changed now. So we can see the person ID, our new calendar variable, and also the month going from 1 to 36 for each person. And notice this calendar variable is still in string format, and I'm going to want to make that into a numeric value just to make it a little easier to work with. So first, I'll replace the month variable so that it's more intuitive, so that as month increases, so does time go forward. And because there's 36 months here, I'm going to say 37 minus month. Excellent. Okay. I think I'll also do a sort by person ID and month, just so that if I want to browse and look at it, it'll appear in chronological order. Excellent. Okay. Now, the next step is I want to destring. I'm going to create a new variable. First, it's just going to be the same as our calendar variable. Then, because it has P's for pregnancy, B's for birth, and T's for pregnancy that ended, not in a birth, I'm going to replace those like alphabetical codes with numeric ones just to help make things go a little easier. So in fact, I may even just copy and paste from my do file just to save you all the having to watch me having to type those 4 lines of code. So I've just assigned them pretty arbitrarily to 90, 91, and 92, just to make sure I keep them very separate from the other numerical values, which are those, the contraceptive methods. And I destringed it so that it's only numbers. Next, I'm going to recode this new numerical version of the calendar data. So I want to tell it that if it's 0, keep it 0. We do want to know when a woman is not using family planning. Then I'm going to tell it if you encounter a birth, a pregnancy, or an ended pregnancy, also give that a 0. This woman is not using family planning at that time. And lastly, if it's any of those other numerical codes, I want to give it a 1, because everything that is not 0, a birth, a termination, or pregnancy, all the other codes mean that the woman is using family planning. So I'm creating my variable FP use. All right. This might be a good time to I like to prove to myself that I've coded something correctly. So I just confirming I wanted this value to be 1 if the woman is using family planning and 0 otherwise. And it looks like that worked. Excellent. So we're really close. The very last step before we can create that graph is that I need to specify or identify the women who used family planning in her very first month. So I will give the disclaimer that while I've used data a lot, I'm constantly learning. So this may feel like a really hokey way to do it. Definitely tell me in the chat or reach out to us somehow. Maybe there's a much slicker way to do this. This is how I know how to do this pretty easily. So I'm going to create a temporary variable. Just going to set it to 0 right now. And next, I want to replace it with a 1. If the woman was using a family planning method, and also it was the very first month of our sample. So that's 3,166 person months where it was month 1 and the woman was using family planning. So it's also a little over 3,000 women who should be in this sample. So next, I'm going to use an egen command, which says, find the maximum value of this variable, discontinue sample temporary. And it's only 0 or 1, but find the maximum of it. Hold on 1 minute. Find the maximum value and only do this within the same person ID. So that if a woman was using family planning in that very first month, I want all 36 of her observations to also have this, this variable equal to 1. Excellent. So I'm going to tab this new variable I made just to confirm that that turned out as I expected. And sure enough, I checked this yesterday. This is sorry, there's a phone going off. This is 36 times 3,166, those 3,000 women who should be in the sample. So this is all checking out. Next, I'm going to set the month. And this is where I'm specifying to Stata what my survival function is. So I'm telling it the person you're looking for is person ID. And then the failure condition is if she has stopped using family planning or if FP use is equal to 0. Okay. Sounds good. And now we're going to graph it. So STS graph. And this is where this discontinue sample variable comes in. I'm telling it to only restrict this graph to women who are actually using family planning in that first month. Right. And sure enough, that matches our goal for today. And that first graph that we showed you just about a half hour ago. Unless we have lots of questions right now, some of the other code that I shared on that website is what we could do with this is compare whether like the relative curves, depending on whether the woman was using the pill or maybe an implant. We would go through this example and we would just specify that we're only interested in women who started the period and were using that particular method. But I do want to open up to questions right now before we move on.
So far, I don't see any pressing questions in the chat, but I also just wanted to remind everybody that you'll be able to watch this again in the recording and also the recording for the other session if you are interested in both.
Right. And Elizabeth, I think at what time were we supposed to go back into the main room?
Should be any second now. There was just a flash up to say that it's about to close, but there is a question. Could we email you with questions?
Oh, yes, actually. So there's, you can email and it'll get to me at IPUMS, so IPUMS at umn.edu. And that email is on our website. You'll get our user support. Okay, perfect timing. All right, well, thank you so much, everyone, for your attentiveness. And I hope that this is really helpful for all of you.
We have 47 seconds left before this closes out. And one more question. Have you calculated method switching using the calendar data?
I haven't, but that is entirely possible. If you know what, if that's written in the Q&A, we can do our best to address that in our follow-up blog post. That's a really great question.
Great, thank you. And I think we have 26 seconds left. And I think all the other questions I see are just thank you. And please, not to forget to share the syntax, which we absolutely will. So folks you can download the do files at the link in the chat, and you can try it alongside or try it at home afterwards. Just most people are saying thank you for the syntax, thank you for the demonstration.